Coming from Final Fantasy 15, I had high hopes for this game. I had heard nothing but positive things about it, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. I'm a new fan of the Final Fantasy series, as 7 Remake was my first ever time playing through one of the games, so I wanted to expand my horizons and see what this game was all about. Well, I'm so glad I did. Everything from the story to the music just left me in awe. Even though it was released over 20 years ago, this game has aged beautifully. This is my spoiler-free review of Final Fantasy X. The story had me hook, line, and sinker. You start off as Titus. Okay, I know it's pronounced Titus, but you'd have to pay me to call him that. A professional blitzball player from a city called Zanarkand. During a match, the entire city is flooded with monsters and subsequently destroyed. While all hope seems lost for our protagonist, he then washes up on a beach on the island of Besaid, where he's greeted by Wakka, another blitzball player. Some more story happens until it's discovered that Wakka, along with 2 other characters named Lulu and Kimahri, actually have a really important job: protecting a girl named Yuna while she does her pilgrimage to stop an evil force known as Sin. Since Titus doesn't want to miss the party, he tags along as the group goes to different temples to get summons to defeat Sin. While I may have just explained like the first 3 hours of the game, I left a lot out, which really is a testament to how well Final Fantasy X's story is. I found myself drawn to it, 1, because of the characters, but also because 2, it felt easy to understand. Okay, now granted, some parts kind of flew over my head, like the faith and all that, but the vast majority of it was so well done, I wouldn't realize 2 to 3 hours had just flown by. Another reason I love the story so much was because of how hectic everything seemed. That sounds like a criticism, but I don't mean for it to be. When the climax of the story hits about halfway through the game, everything ramps up and the actions that the characters do become 10 times more important. It was so cool to witness that, and I couldn't wait to jump right back into the story. Now, as much as I love the second half of the story, like I just said, it's the first half that's a slog. It seems this happens to be in almost every RPG I play, where the first half sucks, then the second half is amazing, and of course Final Fantasy X is no exception. Just having to travel to different islands just so Yuna could get a summon was so boring, and don't even get me started on those stupid cloister trials. You just solve these stupid puzzles so Yuna could go get that temple summon, but these things were so complicated that I literally needed a guide for every single one. Every single one! While the second half of the game had trials, for some reason I didn't mind them as much. Maybe I just knew I had to do them, or I was just looking forward to the story so much that I didn't mind. But yeah, the first half is pretty boring, but if you can sit through it, that second half is so incredibly done that you won't want to look away. This has got to be one of my favorite games in terms of combat. Not only does it combine the previous Final Fantasy's gameplay, 10 spices it up with a turn order in the top right. Now, this sounds silly as a lot of games do this, but you'd be wrong. 10 completely removes that stupid ATB bar in favor of an actual turn-based system in the turn order. In previous Final Fantasy games, if you wanted a character to move, you had to wait until their meter filled up completely before you were allowed to decide what they did. It could put you in some bad situations where the enemy can outspeed your entire party and could hit multiple times in a row before you could attack even once. But thankfully, Final Fantasy X curbed this massive issue I have with the previous Final Fantasies. Besides actual turn-based RPG gameplay, 10 also uses a system called overdrives, where every character has their own combination you can use to deal massive damage. Like Lulu can cast multiple spells in a row, or Yuna can summon a summon, that's a sentence, with their overdrive gauge already filled. You can also learn new overdrives as you progress through the game, like Titus learning the sought-after Jack Shot. Actually getting that move was so cool too, as you only have a certain area you can learn it in. Once you march all the way there, you have to time your button presses to the prompt shown on screen. Mess one up and you gotta reload your save file, which, while frustrating, was also super rewarding once I learned it. Overdrives made the combat just a bit more enjoyable than it already had been, and on top of that, it made me think of when I should use their overdrives. So they also offer a level of strategy to the already strategy-heavy genre. Since I brought up summons, also called Aeons in this game, a bit ago, let's talk about those too. Each one of them has their own unique animation, like Ixion coming out of a lightning portal that Yuna creates, or Valefor diving out of the sky and then subsequently receiving head pats and scratches from Yuna. Once an Aeon appears, you can control them like a regular party member and pick what skills they use when. After dealing enough damage, you'll get to unleash a summon's powerful move. For example, Shiva would have to deal a certain amount of damage before she could cast Diamond Dust, or Ifrit with Hellfire. Even though I haven't played too many Final Fantasies as mentioned earlier, this iteration of summons has been one of my favorites and probably will be as I play more games in the series. Going off of Aeons for a second, I got a lot to say about the boss battles in the game. While I won't spoil anything, of course, these things were so frustrating. I lost count of the amount of times I would get a boss to low HP, only for it to just decide that it would be a great time to cast this extremely powerful magic that would insta-kill the entire party. For some games, you get the luxury of not having to redo the other phases in the fight that you already defeated, but Final Fantasy X is not like that. You gotta redo all the phases, even if you got to the last one. I got to experience this firsthand a lot, as almost every boss fight I had to redo, sometimes even multiple times. To me, it felt like the difficulty would just spike up for no reason in these fights. I understand that the boss needs to be probably a bit higher level than you for some challenge, but for some reason these bosses, it felt like I was 10 to 15 levels below them, and it just sucked. I actually had to do some grinding as well, as a certain boss on a snowy mountain, if you've played the game you know exactly who I'm talking about here, was just wiping my entire party almost instantly. When I finally defeated these bosses, of course I felt overjoyed because I would never have to fight them ever again. Until I realized that harder bosses were coming up and a sense of dread would just come over me. It sucks too because the gimmicks of some of these bosses were so cool and unique. I think the best way I can describe the gameplay overall is really good, until you get to the boss fights. Then it's not so much. From a girl that can summon Aeons to a talking panther thing, what's not to love about the cast of Final Fantasy X? I love the whole party, yes, even Kimahri, and would always look forward to hearing dialogue between them. One of my favorite moments in this game is when the party's headed to Luca. I think? If that's not right, I'm sorry, I haven't played this game in a while. And Yuna sleeps in and consequently is late to the party leaving. Here, just watch the rest of the scene. It's so good.
Yo, sleepyhead!
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Really, there's no rush. Here, your hair.
A summoner with bad hair. What's the world coming to?
You could have woken me up.
We called to you, but with all that snoring.
What is it today? Everyone's picking on me. Oh, you too, Sir Auron?
Once Lady Yuna fixes her hair, we leave.
I still laugh so hard at this scene, as even the quiet yet serious Sir Auron teases her, and it really shows the party cares for one another. You know, I think the best way I can describe my thoughts on this group is by comparing them to another video games, Persona 4. While, yes, both games are vastly different from each other, the way the core party is treated is almost identical. Both groups feel so tight-knit and generally can be perceived as being lifelong friends, when in actuality they don't really even know each other for that long. I love seeing these kinds of bonds in video games that center around a party, and to see Final Fantasy X have that made me so happy and always look forward to playing it. And before I finish up this segment, I can't not bring up the laughing scene. If you've been on the internet, you probably already know what I'm talking about. If you don't, here's the scene.
This is weird.
Next, try laughing out loud.
What?
Come on, show me. You probably shouldn't laugh anymore. Too funny.
It was your idea.
I've seen so many people online chalk this up as nothing more than bad voice acting, then saying they won't play the game because of it. Let me tell you right now, this scene doesn't have quote-unquote bad voice acting, but But instead, it's a scene taken so out of context, it's crazy. As to avoid spoilers, I won't say why they're forcing themselves to laugh, but they are. It's one of the most crucial scenes in the game, in my opinion, and I hate to see it dragged through the mud online just because the laugh sounds weird. This scene shows Titus, but especially Yuna, in a vulnerable state, and forcing themselves to laugh not only helps Yuna continue her journey, but this quintessential scene starts a relationship between the two. So, here's what I have to say to all the haters of this scene. I genuinely think Final Fantasy X has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. It's hard to describe, but there's something really for everyone. You got your slow and pretty songs like Xanarkin, and then on the flip side, you got your hardcore rock songs like Otherworld. I mean, if I hadn't played this game and someone told me these songs were from the same game, I would have had a hard time believing them. FF10's soundtrack was the last one composer Nobuo Uematsu worked on for the Final Fantasy series, and it's a shame since these songs are so good, like holy crap. If you haven't listened to the OST for this game, I highly, highly recommend it. And if you don't like gaming, then why did you click on this video? I mean, it helps me out at the same time. I don't understand. Aside from the music, the art style is really good too. Long gone are those tiny 3D models that make all their characters look like children. And this. Ew! Instead, we get these 3D models. I mean, wow, look at the difference between 9 and 10s. It's like night and day. Besides the character models, the environments were so pretty too. When I think of pretty environments from the game, I immediately remember Macalania Woods. The atmosphere sets itself perfectly, and the mix of blues and a dark forest gives a mysterious yet saddening feel. I mean, I got all that from looking at a tree, for crying out loud. Someone could look at this game and just dismiss it as being quote-unquote old, and so the graphics don't look as great, but the remaster greatly enhances said graphics into making this game look like a newer and more modern one. Basically what I'm trying to say is, don't let the graphics stop you from playing FF10. Sure, it might not be as up-to-date in the graphics department as modern games are now, but it's a great game nonetheless. Even though there were a couple aspects of Final Fantasy X I did not enjoy, overall I would consider it a 4.5 out of 5-star game. The second half of the story was so hooking, the gameplay was smooth and riveting, the characters were written beautifully, the music was incredible, and the graphics looked great. If you haven't played 10 yet, you seriously need to. It's by far one of the best Final Fantasies I've ever played, and I can't wait to explore the series further with other installments. Thank you so much for hearing me ramble about Final Fantasy X. If you've played it, what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more game reviews just like this, and turn those post notifications on so you know when I post next. Thanks for watching, everyone!